Hello and welcome. There's two paint splodges there, so I know if I place my sitting cloth on the paint splodges, I'm more or less sitting in the right place. And someone commented that a monk such as myself is unable to find detachment, so they've been told by other monks, because of my activities concerning making these videos. I spend a lot of time on this, and many of you commented back in response saying, well, don't many of the Krubarajans, if you're in the Thailand area, or many senior monks or acharyas also teach? And of course that is correct. We are to spend some time explaining, talking about the Dharma, as you too can, as lay practitioners, but only when asked. As far as time is concerned, I'll just reiterate, because although someone said you really needn't respond to such comments, Bhante, I'm not a senior monk. I'm sharing my experience on that journey towards one day maybe seniority, but I'm already 57, so I'll never have the vasas, the years in the robes behind me of some of my teachers whom have been in the robes for 40, 50, even 60 years. Of course, that would make me something like 120 odd to even get close to that level of service in the Sangha. So I'm a Navaka monk or a Majjhima monk, a new monk or a middle length term monk of somewhat little experience in the Sangha, in monastic life. I suppose getting towards 10 years now, but a lot of experience in life, and it's that I try to share with you. Having transitioned from ordinary life to monastic life. Time-wise, 3 hours a week at most. I record 3 talks, about 40 minutes. I don't pre-plan them or even think about them. I don't edit them. I literally press record, upload, it's done. I do review your comments, which might take another half hour or so, but really no more than an hour a day, 3 days a week is what I spend on this activity, which is perhaps considerably less than many monks in my own tradition and others spend on other unrelated Dharma activities, such as eating, for instance. Monks eating breakfast every day have either to prepare it for themselves, get it for themselves, or have many monks or lay people, supporters, preparing it, getting it all arranged. Then they have to eat it. Then they have to clean up after that process. Then they go about preparing for the next meal of the day, lunch. I only eat 1 meal a day, so I save a considerable amount of time by that single meal Dhutanga practice that we discussed yesterday. And that is why I adopt that particular practice of 1 meal. It frees my time up. Not so much for this, as I say, 3 hours a week at the very most, which I think is very little time indeed to dedicate towards just replying to your comments and questions and sharing my own experience in relation to those. Another comment was I seem to be defending this practice of Buddhism in some respects in the nature of my replies. And yes, it can, in one's tone when one speaks, sound defensive on occasions. And if that is so, I apologize for that. That isn't my intention. My intention, however, is to explain, not to defend. The practice of Buddhism as a whole, the philosophy, this way of life, requires no defense. It compares. The Dharma doesn't suffer by way of comparison to any other philosophy or religion, in that it simply states basic truths, the Four Noble Truths of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. And even within that Noble Eightfold Path leading towards the end of suffering, which can be summarized as Sila, moral virtue, Samadhi, meditation, and Panya, wisdom, there is nothing that conflicts with religions or other philosophies. So it needs no defense. And that is all I would apologize for if I've sounded defensive in my way I've tried to explain the reasoning behind some of our activities, such as the Jhutanga practices I spoke of yesterday, such as the morning chanting. Now my little routine is a bit topsy-turvy today, upside down, a little bit punctuated, because I got to the dentist. It wasn't without some difficulty, but I got to the dentist yesterday only to find it was open, but there were no dentists present. I'm not really sure of the purpose of it being open, really, with no dentists there. It wasn't to make appointments, because you you can't do that either here. That's done by some system I'm not a part of, being not a resident here. They call channeling. Not of a mystical nature. It's a way you get appointments with doctors or dentists or hospitals or such like. But as a monk, I'm very fortunate. I can walk into these places and they see me relatively quickly. I don't usually have to wait or even queue, which I feel a little bit awkward and embarrassed about. I'm happy to queue and wait my turn, but maybe they just see, foreign monk, we better get him out of the way, in which case I acquiesce. But on this occasion, no dentist present. So I've suffered another night of all kinds of levels of pain, which I've at least concluded over the night. In a way, I'm glad he wasn't there yesterday. I might have acted in haste, or he might have acted in haste. There's less tendency to give advice or diagnostics. You more or less have to go in and say, fill this tooth or pull this tooth, repair or remove, I've learned. And if I'd said that yesterday, I would have removed the wrong tooth. So the tooth that's been repaired, I think, is okay. On closer analysis, in meditation, as I couldn't sleep, just focusing on the pain and trying to really pinpoint exactly where it came from, it seems to be attributed to its nearest neighbour, which is a very dodgy looking rotten tooth, which is sort of broken off halfway and barely above the surface. So this is the tooth, I think, that's causing radiating pain and is perhaps infected and maybe causing me this little bit of undue suffering. So in order to not create more suffering than necessary, bearing in mind that middle path we discussed yesterday, I skip morning puja that I was just talking about, one of those practices we do. It isn't, for me, a religious activity. It's a time for reflection. It's a time in the morning after my first period of meditation, which is usually an hour or a couple of hours long after I wake at 3 a.m, to waken, refresh, and clear the mind, clear the vocal cords, clear the airways, open the eyes to the candlelight, the senses to the smell of the incense, the ambient surroundings, the sound of the birds waking as the sun rises. All of these sensual but not unwholesome things we can happily delight in as Buddhist practitioners without being attached. And even if a little attached to them, it's okay, they're nature. It is nature. It doesn't cost anything, so enjoy it like we enjoy samadhi. It's free. It doesn't run out, so we enjoy it. And I enjoy that morning puja and always miss it when I don't, if I skip it, as I did this morning. But that was because I'm finding it difficult. Now is not so bad. But when I did have some sleep, and when I first woke, it was quite painful, and chanting with a very painful tooth is quite difficult to really enjoy it and be mindful of the words you are saying. So this chanting is important, and it brings me on to the first comment. I always miss, when I skip it, I feel now I've missed it. I also didn't go on my full Pindapata. I went to just the neighbouring few houses because, well, I can't eat much. It's a struggle to eat. This is the main problem, really. More so than the pain, because one needs food to survive. So somebody very kindly offered to make me some soup, but I declined because I already had rice and some vegetables in my bowl, which I thought would be okay if I eat them slowly. And he then very kindly offered to give me a lift to the dentist later on this morning. So this talk is being recorded a lot earlier than normal, which is very useful also. But I wanted to get back, sit, eat my meal with a lot of time and just relax before going on my trip into town and hopefully getting the treatment that I need, which will be the removal of said tooth, a tooth extraction, which will be my third and hopefully for some time the last, because I don't know how many teeth we have exactly, upwards of 20 and below 30 in my case, I'm pretty sure. It's quite hard to count them, isn't it, if you try? But nevertheless, they're the main chewing ones that you tend to lose when you get to this time of life, it seems, and they're the important ones. So I don't want to lose too many more, but hopefully by removal of this one, the repaired one will survive a good few years longer. Otherwise, you know, it's so tempting, isn't it, to take this nihilistic approach and view and say, well, remove them all and give me a nice plastic set of gnashers, because they'd just be easy to chew and drop in a glass at night to clean like my grandmother did and my grandfather. But those who have such things will probably disagree and say, look after your teeth. Don't you dare take such an attitude. You know, your teeth are very valuable. And I agree, we must look after our bodies. This is what the middle path is all about. And thanks to for your assistance and support, we're able to at least maintain my existence here. And on that first comment, it says, with relation to chanting also, this is purely coincidence. As I say, I don't plan this. These are your comments I receive. I don't reply to the comments. I reply to your emails. That takes 20 minutes or so in addition each day. Each day I do that. But that's my correspondence with the outside world. That's the only connection with English-speaking people I have in any sense, or correspondence or communication. I have no social media, no telephone line, no... That covers everything, I think, doesn't it, by way of communication? I think this funny tune, if you can hear it in the background, is the bread van. He might well be looking for me, because he usually gives me a bun. Nevertheless, I'm sure he'll know where to find me if he carries on looking. So this is when I'm on Pindapata. He gives me a bun. Very nice man, very fresh, nice bun also. Moving on with the first comment. See, pain is an intoxicant, the Buddha says, so we have to treat it as such and accept that it will affect our powers of mindfulness and concentration. And the way we treat it is we focus right on it, again as I spoke of yesterday, or we distract ourselves with a meditation object, or we have to just grin and bear it, or we deal with it. And I've reached the stage of having to deal with it. It says here in this comment, are there any particular chants we can recite that would help someone who is sick? The chant that's usually used for that purpose is the Ratana Sutta, which I chant every third or fourth day in the morning. If you go through the chanting playlist, you can quickly find it, listen to it in the Pali language, if you understand that. Otherwise, listen to it or read it in the chanting book in your own language and understand it. Are there any particular chants we can recite that would help someone who is sick? I have to answer no. It might, if you chant directly in the presence or with someone who is sick, help them clear their mind, relax, And if they understand the meaning of the words they're chanting, help them understand the nature of their sickness, that it is in the nature of our existence, impermanence, suffering, and out of our control, that is the cause of this deterioration in our health and resultant sickness. This is the reflections in the chanting that help us understand things. They're not magical prayers to a higher power to heal others, and shouldn't be considered such, although they are very much so considered such. In Buddhism, outside of Buddhism, and in Buddhist countries and in non-Buddhist countries, both in places where they are practicing varying schools of Buddhism and places where they're not, it is still considered that this chanting is for that purpose, to pray, to wish, to ask for external assistance. None of it is. This is why it isn't by comparison to other philosophies or religions that it is not a religion in that sense of the word. There is no higher power other than what we have within ourselves, our own natural Buddha-ness or Buddha nature, our own ability to become awakened, which is what Buddha means, to see the realities of those characteristics of existence. And the chanting can help us do that. Also, the sound of chanting can very much be calming, peaceful, and help people who are unwell. And if that's what you mean, yes, of course it can help. But if you're doing it in your room at home and they're on the other side of the world, or even in the room next door and they can't hear you, it makes no difference whatsoever, other than only to yourself and your own feelings and the development of metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion for that individual who might be suffering. Also, as they recover, mudita, the joy you have for their recovery and gratitude in that. And throughout this process of whether it's just sickness, aging naturally, or the dying process, the equanimity you develop, upekkha. These are the 4 Brahma Viharas, which are the resultant qualities of this overall practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, which lead us to the end of suffering in this lifetime. So always, whatever religiosity is associated with it, we don't reject it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's wholesome, it's developing wholesome mind states and helping to reduce unwholesome mind states, but it mustn't be seen, as in other religions, as requests. Prayer means request, and they're not prayers. They're reflections on what we can do to help ourselves and what we can do to help others by way of our own behaviour and our own personal development. She's listening very attentively today. Right. When I'm distracting myself with hobbies, I get inundated with unpleasant thoughts, feelings, and memories. Unresolved trauma, essentially. But when I am present, aware, and not doing anything, these same things hardly bother me. Could you shed some light on this? Well, that's wonderful, because that's completely the opposite way round to, I would say, 99% of people practicing, Buddhist practitioners, I should say. It's normally the case we distract ourselves with all of those hobbies and such like to not be inundated with those traumatic thoughts and worries. And we learn through the practice to practice meditation and just accept these thoughts as they arise, stay a while and pass away. To be in touch with them, face them head on, see the impermanent nature of them, that they're just suffering, but they're out of our control. So not controlling them, but seeing them for what they are, impermanent and not self. This is the practice. So what you're experiencing there is in reverse. So if indeed, when you are present and aware and not doing anything, those troublesome and worrisome thoughts are not bothering you, then continue being aware and not doing anything. Why? Bother with the hobbies and all of those other things you're talking about if they're really not doing what they're supposed to do, which is distract you. You shouldn't bother with them anyway. You should just concentrate on practice and meditation, keeping the precepts and practicing meditation in order to develop samadhi. This is far more fruitful than anything else you can occupy yourself. And if occupying yourself with those unfruitful activities is causing you stress and worry, why do it? You found the answer there already for yourself. You've got peace, calm and tranquility in not doing those things. So continue with that. If you have mistakenly got the wrong way round, it's a whole other matter. And what we do is we observe these distractions, these annoyances that most of us have when we try to sit to be calm and allow the mind to settle, we call the hindrances. We can summarize anything that gets in the way of our meditation, and indeed, all we try to achieve in life under 5 categories: sensual desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness and worry, and doubt. They're the 5 hindrances in meditation, and also the 5 hindrances to life. And when we see sensual desire as just something we want, we don't necessarily need, and also are wanting to satiate something that is insatiable, and only by satisfying that insatiable desire results in adding fuel to the fire of desire, and wanting more, when we see that clearly, we can eradicate a good part of sensual desire. Not sensual desire for good things, like developing samadhi, like being generous, like developing the 4 Brahma Viharas. This desire we call chanda, good desire. But thirst, unquenchable thirst, craving, this kind of desire we call tanha. Chanda, tanha are the Pali words for good desire and bad desire. Tanha being bad desire. Wanting to drink Pepsi or Fanta or 7-Up when you're thirsty is more a tanha, a thirst, because you're adding fuel to the fire of desire, whereas water will do. Water is still a desire, a tanha, a thirst, but when you know that water will satisfy that thirst just as readily as anything else, then you'll be satisfied more easily and just drink water, which is freely available, hopefully and usually. So this is the understanding of the nature of desire. And ill will is just not wanting something to be that is. When we understand the nature of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self, both sensual desire and ill will are mostly eradicated, because you really see the impermanence in a desire. It's just a bubble that will pop. And the impermanence in suffering. Again, nothing is permanent. All conditioned things are impermanent. Laziness, we can do physical things to make sure we're not tired. But when we start to enjoy meditation, this will no longer be a problem. And it comes with practice, determination. Keep doing it every day. Restlessness and worry is just thinking about the past and thinking about the future. And doubt is really attributed to ignorance, not understanding. You see, these 5 hindrances all come down to the 3 root defilements: greed, hatred and delusion. Lobha, dosa, moha in the Pali language. And these are the cause of those obstacles, both in our meditation and in the way of anything we want to achieve in life. Some people say, well, if you don't have desire and greed, you'll achieve nothing in life. The contrary. If you can be accepting of what you have achieved it. You've achieved contentment, which is all that we're trying to acquire is aimed at doing, providing contentment. So when you're already content, there is no need or requirement for anything else, either to do or to have, or to be. And we can progressively move along this path and developing that enthusiasm, that intention, that desire into chanda, positive desire, using that energy, vidya, to direct our efforts towards good causes, towards generosity, helping others, supporting others, being kind, just smiling at strangers, but also being kind and looking after yourself and allowing yourself the time to sit and practice meditation more and more and more. This will extinguish and eradicate eventually doubt, the fifth of those 5 hindrances, which comes as avijja, ignorance, not a lack of intellectual knowledge, because some of the most intellectually knowledgeable, qualified people are extremely ignorant, because they have all of the technical information and knowledge to hand, but no way of using it, no knowledge of how to use it. It's the practical application of the Dharma that is important. And it is the practical application of the Dharma that assists with fulfilling our objectives of becoming free from suffering in this lifetime and ultimately attaining to Nibbana. Okay. If a monk disrobed due to a serious violation of precepts, is there any way he can be readmitted to the monastic ordination? So the top three, is it four? Sorry, the top four. So if you kill a human being intentionally, bear in mind everything's based on intention. If you intentionally kill a human being, if you have sexual relations with another, if you create a schism in the Sangha, so create some kind of argument, disruption amongst your fellow brothers or sisters in the Sangha, without due discussion and debate, you say, hey, this monk did this in this particular branch of the Sangha, and some unfounded gossip or something like that, to create problems within the security and sanctity of the Sangha itself. These are the three disrobable offences by which you cannot be reordained. After which, the other offences one can reordain, and one can disrobe and reordain up to, I think, 7 times in any lifetime. Not necessarily because you were disrobed, because you committed an offence, but you're not physically disrobed, you're not taken through a process of disrobing. By the committing of the offence, you are no longer a monk. You create a schism in the Sangha, whether you continue to wear robes or not. You are not a monk. You have sexual relations or you kill a human being. You're not a monk because you have broken those key rules. Of course, you will be required to leave the monastery and no one would support you, so you would probably, by local determination and local authorities in Buddhist countries, be required to remove your robes, for sure. And you wouldn't be able to reordain again. But the other offences, yes, you can reordain. Now, there are, with some of the lesser offences, various degrees of little punishments, you can call them, sacrifices you have to make, what's the word? Atonements you make just in monastic life. And then after being disrobed, can a monk continue to practice as if a monk, but only not recognized as an ordained monk? Well, anyone prior to ordination or after disrobing can live however they wish, like a monk or like a hedonistic idealist, like a democrat or like a whatever the opposite of that is. A communist. Are you allowed to say that word these days? I don't know. You can choose. It's up to you, isn't it, how you live. Whether or not it fits within society that you're living in, that's another question. Or whether you need to or want to or have to fit within society you're living in. It's another question. If you walk around wearing robes in a Buddhist country and you're not a monk, you might get in trouble. They have laws. They have fines. Even prison sentences if you're not fully ordained and can't produce relevant documentation to show that you are, or have references or people that the authorities can check with. Because they've had to try, this has only come about recently, in recent decades, because they've had to try and stop, let's say, some rather unsavoury characters going around begging for money on the basis that they're Buddhist monks. Well, of course, Buddhist monks don't use money. So why would you be doing that in the first place? But it is done in some of the holy sites. It was being done in India and in other places around the world where there are large congregations of Buddhists who want to give. And if they see a monk, and the easiest way to give is to give some money, if there's a bowl there and a monk there, they'll put some money in the bowl. So some unsavoury characters have taken advantage of this. Now, to stop that, the tourist offices and local authorities have made it absolutely against the law to do that, and not just because of the Vinaya, but you have to be a fully ordained monk, not just getting changed in the local washrooms and leaving your carrier bag with your Nike trainers and Levi jeans somewhere to be looked after whilst you go out begging as a monk for the day. So that's not a done thing, of course. I don't know whether it still goes on, and I remember a long time ago seeing some videos of such things, but I'm sure it probably does. Are there any examples of this situation that you're aware of? And is it different in the Mahayana tradition? I don't know about the Mahayana tradition in relation to this comment or this question, and I have no examples of this situation that I'm aware of, no. Apart from in the suttas where Devadatta was wanting to be the Buddha and be head of the Sangha, and therefore created a schism. So he was the cousin of the Buddha, and then they became, I can't say the Buddha's nemesis because the Buddha had no ill will towards him, but the other way round, possibly there was some nemesis aspect to the relationship, arch enemy aspect to the relationship, but that's in the suttas. In real life, well, that was real life, but in modern day real life, I don't know anyone or that situation. These matters don't happen because the monastic Sangha isn't this strict order, or you don't take lifetime vows. It's not a hierarchical tradition. I'll cover the next, or one of the comments coming a bit later on that, where they say I said that I wear the same robes, or all monks of all levels, in terms of the hierarchy in monastic life is purely based on years ordained in the robes. How many vasas, that is rains seasons, you've lived as a monk through. So you have to complete 3 months rains season as a monk, as a bhikkhu, to have 1 vasa, and so on. So 10 vasas is 10 3-month rains seasons as a monk in the robe. So a 10 vasa monk is a Thera. A 20 vasa monk is a Mahathera. That is as far as it goes. We all wear the same robes. There are no special hats, no epaulets, no medals, no colourful ornaments, orbs, staffs, or sticks that we might carry. we will sit in order of not our birth age, but our ordination age. So there might be a monk aged 30 who will be sitting in the prime spot with monks in their 60s, 70s and 80s sitting to the side of him. And when it comes to collecting the food, behind him in the line, because he's served more years in the robes. Therefore, we treat birth as our ordination, as our monastic experience, which is why I'm a young monk in that sense. Might be an old person, but a young monk. So, robes-wise, then you compare in the comment to, say, something like the Catholics, where they have all different levels of garb, accoutrements, attire, uniforms to denote your rank. It bears no comparison. There is no hierarchy in Buddhism. They do have in Buddhist countries certain offices attributed to long-term practitioners and people who have offered many years of service to the Sangha. But this is of an aside. It is not part of the Vinaya established rules in monasticism. It's simply any monk walking through the doors here, which is probably 90% of them, is going to, because they ordain usually into monastic life at the earliest age possible of 20. A bhikkhu ordains here in Sri Lanka at 20, as in anywhere else in the world. And they might be now 30 or 40. If they're 40 and they come to visit me here, even though I'm 57, I immediately bow to the monk, who may be 30 or 40 or 35, not because he's necessarily more experienced even in the practice itself, but because he has been in the robes longer than myself. That's the hierarchy that there is. And we all wear the same robes. The only difference is colour, but that's geographical, regional, as far as what's available with respect to dyes. And that's usually done from natural, in this case, the heartwood of the jackfruit tree is used to dye these robes. But that's more a Thai thing. Other countries use different things. So, yes, you can't tell by physical age or robes how long a monk has been ordained. And there's no regard given or necessity to know of a monk's attainments. So a monk can be an arahant and you wouldn't know. Of course, if you get the opportunity to live with that monk for some time, you will, no doubt, realize that you're living with an arahant or a sotapanna, but someone who is highly attained in the practice. But this takes living with them for some time to know this, living through all kinds of circumstances. And that's it. So there is no hierarchy. So you're right, it's very different to any other religion. And that's why, for me, it's not a religion. Because religion implies all of that. Someone commented, I should be informed of other religions. Meaning I should research, I should understand, I should know about other religions. Again, you did comment in the replies, I noticed that I shouldn't bother replying to such comments, but just, not in my defense, but just to explain, I'm quite informed about other religions, no expert. I wouldn't even consider myself as 100% thoroughly informed in all aspects of Buddhism, as I could be. I'm more a practitioner than a learner, and practicing takes time, lots of practice to get there in the end. But I did study other religions, primarily Christianity, yes, and both Catholic and Protestant, but other religions also, prior to even knowing anything about Buddhism in the first place. It was only when Buddhism came along that I realized, for me, what a lot of old bunkum, kibosh, nonsense, all of the religions I'd studied and tried to practice previously were, because they were just that, hierarchical, doctrinal, enforced religions of a belief system which I didn't believe. Whereas Buddhism was just freedom of all of that. No hierarchy, no doctrine. The Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, is not doctrinal statements. They're just clear statements of the way it is. Life, it's just that. And coming to understand that clearly is the practice of Buddhism. That can't really be described as a religion. Now, where it is used and is a religion in Buddhist countries, it is no bad thing either, because it supports the core teachings of Buddhism, the practice of generosity and kindness, but moreover the practice of keeping precepts, practicing meditation and developing wisdom, the entire Noble Eightfold Path. So I'm informed of other religions. I appreciate where you're coming from. You may think that, and it is probably true, of all faiths, of all seeming religions, that representatives or people speaking from that point of view have no experience of other faiths or religions. But don't forget, I come from a non-Buddhist country, a Christian primarily country, surrounded by and amidst the cultures of Islamic faiths, the varying denominations of Christian faiths, and a strong presence of Judaic faiths. So there are Christians, Muslims, Jews, Sikhs that I've worked with, I've lived with, I've ate with, I've socialized with, I've been with for a good part of my informed existence on this planet. I also took religious qualifications at school. It was a requirement. I had a Catholic school upbringing. I also went to the Church of England Seminary College for a short period to learn about becoming a Church of England that is Christian vicar. So I'm duly informed, consider it said, of other religions. And it only goes towards confirming more my commitment, my determination to this practice of Buddhism, which is simple in itself and works. And on that note, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu. I chuckled then because I noticed that throughout all the time I was talking, there's no tooth pain. So if you have toothache, talk to something, talk to the wall. This is the distraction method. But no doubt it will come back, but my lift will be coming shortly, so I will go, have said extraction, until next time, when all will be hopefully well. We're approaching, I'm going to have to look at the calendar, I don't have, I must do this. We're approaching Wesak, I should just quickly mention. Certainly after this weekend, the next, about the 12th or 13th, is the full moon of May, which is Wesak. It's the main Buddhist holy holiday celebrating the birth, enlightenment and death, or parinibbana, final attainment to eventual nibbana of the Buddha. 2,500 and what is it now? 66 or 67? Probably 67 or 68 years ago. I'll check up on these facts and details because these celebrations will be going on, meaning another holiday here. We've just had the whole New Year's holiday last week. This week we have here, this is in Sri Lanka, Labour Day tomorrow, which is another reason to get the tooth extraction done today, because there will be another holiday tomorrow, which no doubt, as the way things are here, will result in a holiday on Friday and continue over the weekend. So to find a dentist working, I'll need to get on with that. Labour Day. I'm not sure what the significance of that here is, but it's a day, it's Bank Holiday Monday, May Day, in the UK. The actual day, 1st of May, Labour Day, is today. It's a holiday here, I'm not sure why. It's not even a holiday in the UK, which is, I think, where the idea comes from. I'm not sure about such things. Anyway, I'm rambling on. Anyway, Vesak is the following week. I will have more details. There's no particular celebrations going on with me here, but I will recognise it, obviously, and we'll just have a little explanation about it and talk about it. And no doubt soon the beautiful lanterns will all be going up around the area, which is what they use to signify this auspicious day and time and public holiday in this part of the world. And I'll speak more about that in due course. So until then, as I've already said, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.